Welcome to the part 10 of end-to-end TypeScript series, and in this part we will be using REACTJS web application development framework to consume the REST API that we created earlier. We will be using part 6 NESTJS with slight amendments. These changes include cross-origin request enablement and option headers. So, first we will be scaffolding a new React.js project that will allow us to use React.js framework to create a web application that can consume our REST API. Then we will create the necessary folder structure to functionally organize our files, like calling REST API endpoints and managing the styling information and our pages. There are many CSS frameworks available like Bootstrap and Material Design. We will be using MUI.com. It provides us the pre-styled components based on Material Design and templates that we can directly download and copy into our React.js project. It will help us quickly set up our dashboard application with several different pages like login, register, forget password, and standard dashboard. In the next step, we will be setting up the page router that will allow us to set up the page navigation. And then we will create classes that will use Axios library to send in REST API calls and receive back the JSON response. And finally, we will consume the data that we have received from REST API and make the UI work. Before I get into VS Code, I like to visit a couple of sites. One is Vite, that is our build tool that we will be using to scaffold our React.js application, and it will also supplement us in several different ways, like actually building the application. This tool is not limited to React.js, and we can always use this tool to build applications if you like to employ other frameworks like Vue.js or Angular and many others. So this is one of the tools that can help us with our work. And if you want to get into this guide, it can help us about learning the philosophy of this tool and how it works, its features, hot module replacement that you change some module on the go and it will recompile and help you in development. It supports TypeScript that we are using. The second tool is our MUI.com. This is a tool that will help us styling our application, and it comes with many different features and components that can help us make or shape our application. From pricing point of view, I can get a free version, a free community version that comes with a lot of features that will be sufficient for this example. MUI comes with templates that we can use in our application. Some of these templates are paid, and there are few free ones that we can use to quickly start with our projects. And this is one of free templates that I can change to fit my purpose. Now, if I go back to MUI.com and discover the core libraries here, go to Material UI, get started, I can find several pre-built components that I can use in my web applications. If I come here, I can see a section for components here. And for example, if I want rating, I can get that component here and example of how to use it. Like I'll be using grade 2 here, and I can also select another component that is called DataGrid that has even higher level of abstraction, and it is easier to use and gives a lot of out of the box functionality. In getting started section, I have templates. There are free templates that we can use with our projects like dashboard. I'll be using this dashboard. I'll be removing few things like these charts, and I'll be using the marketing page with these sign in and sign up options. And if I go below here, I can use this sign in and the sign up. I can download this code by clicking this, see the source code, and it will take me to the GitHub repository for Material UI, and I can download any of those pages that I like to. So let me start the instance of application here, and I'm running my project. And here I have the standard marketing template. There are number of different components that are part of it, like headers and partners and many other parts. There are dividers in between. And if I go to sign up here, it allows me to create a new user. So let me call it hello world, hello dot world at the rate example.com, and similarly hello world 123. And if I have a look at my Postgres server users table, I can see that there is no hello world here. So I click sign up here. And if I go back and refresh, I can see that it is hello world here. Now I like to log in. Before I log in, I like to access my dashboard without logging in. It will redirect me back to login page. It will not allow me to access my dashboard. So let me use hello world, hello world 123, and it will allow me to log into my dashboard. And here I can see home page with users, customers, and products. And if I go to customers here, I can see a grid here, and that allow me to create new records, although it's not properly formatted at the moment. But I can use this grid to add new records. But for this example, I'll just be displaying that data, and you can see that it is not properly styled. However, I can hide and show columns. This is out of the box functionality that comes with MUI DataGrid. Maybe something like this. And it allows me to edit a particular record. And later on, I can save it or I can cancel the operation. Similarly, I can delete any particular row here. If I go to the bottom, I can find the name of logged in user and email, and I can also find the logout option here. To my browser tools here, and I select application. In local storage, I can see access token and refresh token that I received after login. They are stored in browser local storage, and logout. It will remove the tokens, and I will not be able to get my dashboard. The approach I'm using here to secure my pages is not 100% foolproof, but it is good for initial understanding. We will not be covering paging and filtering in this video. We will cover it in later episodes. So let me scaffold a Vite project here using React. npm create Vite at latest, project name Frontend React P8. I'll be using REACTJS framework. You can use Angular, Vue.js, or any other. I'll be using Speedy Web Compiler along with TypeScript. It will take a while. So now I can run npm run dev. It will automatically build or transpile. So it is running now, and Vite plus React framework is ready for further development. If you are new to React, you can go to this site react.dev and then click dev. Here you can quickly learn about 80% of the concepts on this page, and then you can explore the concepts and documentation further. React is all about components. For example, I have a component here and its name is my button, and I can use this component like this in markup, and every component returns a JSX markup. You might have observed above that the custom tags are all in proper, like M is capital and B is capital here. So here we have some rules for JSX and then for styling and then for how to display data from within HTML using these braces. Through this documentation to enhance the concepts related to React.js. I'll be focusing more on developing in this video. Now let's create some folders. MD API, MD theme, MD pages, make directory utils. The next step is to download packages related to Material UI by using npm install mui/material and importing some other libraries for theming along with the fonts and icons. We can also import pre-built components using npm install. Let's have a look at package.json, and here we can see that we have number of different MUI libraries. Some of them I'll be using, like I'll be using the grade component, and maybe I can remove others that I have installed earlier. And similarly, I have these React and styled and other components here. I'll be using Axios for calling my backend web services, and I have the router version 7 for React that will help me with URL routing. I can also install other packages by adding them here and calling npm install. Let's visit main.tsx, and in the first line, this code renders the React application with an HTML element named root, and the next tag that wraps around entire application helps us in debugging the application during development, strict mode. And then we have custom app theme. This component allows us to customize MUI theme, and we will have a look at it in a moment. Then we have CSS baseline, which is a material UI component. This helps us normalizing the styles across browsers. Then we have app routes. This app route helps us to map components to different URLs. Now let's visit routes.tsx here. And here we are importing React from React and routes browser router from React router DOM. Then after that, we are importing all different components, pages, login, sign up, marketing page, dashboard, and all of these components or pages use other components. Here we have the app route component, and it is using the browser router component. And inside the browser router component, we have different routes that include the first route that is mapping our route to marketing page, and then the login part to the login component slash sign up route to sign up component, and similarly other ones. As explained earlier, we can download pre-built themes from MUI.com, and we can find the free ones as well. And similarly, we can find page templates for free that we can use inside our applications with some common components like login and change password, sign up, and dashboard. So what I've done, I have actually downloaded few pages like dashboard from MUI.com and copied the file in appropriate folders and subfolders. Similarly for the login and marketing and sign up page. So if we have a look at dashboard page, then we have the main component that is dashboard.tsx. Dashboard tsx use other subcomponents, and those components use other subcomponents, and it is a complete hierarchy of component use. Now if we have a look at login, then we have login component here that self-contains the login page functionality. Then we have the marketing page that uses other subcomponents like logo collection, feature, testimonials, highlight, pricing, FAQ, and footer. Subcomponents are placed inside components subfolder. Now let's review app_theme.tsx. This file gives us an opportunity to customize MUI theme, and we can tweak that theme to fit our purpose. This also allows us to create app theme component that we have already seen in main.tsx here. So here we are calling the React use memo, and inside it we are creating the theme, and in theme we are passing in color schemas, typography, shadows, shape, and other customized components like input customizations, data display customizations, navigation customizations, surface customizations, extra. So if we have a look at this folder, we can see that we have customization folder here, and inside it we have navigation surfaces, input, feedback, and display, data display tsx. Let's open input one here. I have just copied them from the MUI site, And here you can see MUI button, and here we have some properties that we are changing for styling. And similarly, if we go beyond, we can find other components like icon button, and similarly toggle button group, toggle button, and others like input page, outlined input. Similarly, we have for data display as well, MUI item list, we are further customizing. So all of them are used in app theme.tsx, and then we use it in the main.ts. So instead of going and writing custom styles for everything, it is an easier way to pick up a theme and configure it to work with your project. It saves a lot of time. This theme is applied globally along with its customizations for different controls to entire application. What if we like to specifically change some particular component inside a particular page component? Then in that case, we can create a theme folder and we can customize the look and feel or styles of a particular component by providing extra styling information or changing the standard MUI styling. I've created API folder with auth, customer, and users subfolders. Each of them have a service class and a DTO class. In auth, I have like auth DTO and auth service TS. There is another important file API config.ts that contains the endpoints for our services. Like for user API, we have localhost 3000 and v1 API users. That is the backend that we created earlier on using NESTJS. And we will be consuming some of these endpoints in this application. So auth.dto will help me create object that will contain username and password as string, and I'll be able to pass DTO to Axios methods. Let's have a look at authservice.ts. In this case, I'm importing Axios library here, importing the auth.dto and the login URL. Then I have auth service class here and static async login method that takes in one parameter, that is the DTO, and then we are asynchronously calling the Axios post method and passing in three parameters. The first parameter is the URL of the endpoint for login, and second parameter is the DTO that contains username and password that will be converted into JSON and sent as part of body. And the third part is the headers. In this case, I'm using content type application JSON, and in future I might need more headers. On successful return, the data will contain access token and refresh token that I can consume to call other services. Now let's have a look at two different DTOs in this case, and the first DTO is create customer DTO. The only difference between these two DTOs, the customer DTO and create customer DTO, is that the customer DTO doesn't have any ID as it is supposed to be created by the backend. And here we have the customer ID. Then if you go to the customer service, in this case in create customer, I'm passing in the DTO, and in a second step, I'm assuming that after logging in successfully, the code on the login page has already stored access token and the bearer token in the local storage of the browser. Then I'm calling the axios.post with customer API URL and create customer DTO. and passing in headers. And in this case, I am passing one extra header here, authorization and bearer, and then the token that I just brought back from the local storage of the browser. On successful execution, I'll be able to create a new customer. And similarly, I have other methods like get all customers and so on. There is one important thing that codes should be enabled for backend, and all of the endpoints should also support options. The options are used with the codes to check that HTTP methods and headers are allowed by a particular server or not. The server responds with allowed methods and headers, typically including allow and access control allow headers. So it is similar for users. We have the create user DTO, and it has full name, username, password, and update email. Update in email is a Boolean variable. And then if I go to the user service here, then I have a user service and I have a create user that takes in the create user DTO. In this case, it calls user API URL and pass in the user DTO to create a new user that we can later use to log in using the auth service. And similarly, we can have other methods here for the CRUD. Login page React component here, and we are importing number of different packages here that we like to use. Most of them are MUI components. And if we go here, we can find some styling information, and the component function starts here. Here we have number of hooks. The most important one is useState that help us creating variables that we like to use within this component. And after that we have handle click open and handle close. That will help us setting the visibility of forget password dialog that will appear on clicking forget password on the page. We have submit handle. The first thing we do here is to check if we are getting an email error or password error after validation. So validation function will be activated before this handle submit method. In case validation fails, email error and password error will be set to false. We will have a look at validation method, but in sequence validation method will be called before handle submit. Here we are getting form data, and then we are extracting the email and password. After that, we are calling the login service, auth service that we have just seen, and passing in the username and password. On successful return, we will get access and refresh token here. And here we like to store the access and refresh token into browser local storage. It can be retrieved later on from different places in the code, from different pages. Then it can be embedded in other service calls. We are setting the state, full name and username before going to the dashboard so that we can show the full username and email on our dashboard. The set redirect to dashboard is a use state hook, and it will set the variable to true, and it will result in activation of another hook that will be observing the change in this particular state, and as a result to do the actual redirection to the dashboard by passing in the full name and user email. And here we are mentioning that what we are observing here. Here we have the validate input. Here we have the JSX code for our login page. Now it is time to visit sign up page here, and in sign up page that is pretty similar to what we have seen earlier in dashboard and sign in. We have some states here at the top of the component, and mostly we are using the use state here and use navigate hook here. Then we have validate inputs function that allow us to validate email and password and username when we submit the form. We are using the regular expressions to check if it is a valid email and setting appropriate states true or false based on error. And if we come to the lower part, here we have handle submit that will be activated after validation. And in this case, we will be seeing that if there is any error in name, email, or password, in that case, we will return without doing anything. And if this check passes, then we come to the second stage where we actually fetch the data again from the form. After fetching all the data, we call the service user service dot create user and pass in full name, username, password, and update in email. This will allow us to create a new user. The password we pass in will be hashed and stored into database by our backend service that we created earlier. On successful creation, we will navigate back to login page to allow the users to log in using the new password and name. Here is the JSX for the form. It is the template that we downloaded earlier. We can create our own JSX if we like to. The dashboard component or page has some hooks like use navigate and use state and use location. Navigate will help us to navigate to other pages, and similarly, use state can help us to store some variables, and use location will help us to receive variables that we are sending while we are navigating to dashboard page. Like in our case, we are sending in full name and email that we will receive using location.state. In this section, we have another hook, use effect, and we are fetching back access token and refresh token and checking that if that token exists. If the token is not there in our browser, then it means the individual is not logged in and we navigate back to the login page. And then if the individual is logged in and we have token and refresh token, in that case, we will set is authenticated true for the future use. We have a function here, handle view change, that will help us changing the view state. And in this case, we are setting up the view state with the active view on our side menu. Whenever we select any particular option there, it will be automatically stored in active view state. Now let's have a look at JSX. We are wrapping it around with the app theme, and then we have CSS baseline, and we have the box. The main components inside here are side menu, and in the side menu we are passing in the full name and the email that we have just received above, and also passing in handle view change, and on click we will be executing handle view change. This will help us updating the active view state information in our dashboard. So if we go inside the side menu, it will receive full name, email, and on click we have JSX here, and on menu content we are calling on menu click. Then here it is, we are trying to display the full name of the logged in user and email of the logged in user. And then we have two other components for this example, like main grid and customer grid. Based on what is selected in active view, if the home is selected, we will conditionally display the main grid. Otherwise, if the customers is selected, then we will display customer grid. There is another important point that we like to discuss here. If I go back to the dashboard, then we have already seen that we have this handle view change method that we pass in to side menu here, and in side menu we receive it, and while using the menu content we are passing on the same handler here, and the name here is on menu click. And if we go inside the menu content, then we are calling this handler here, which will result in calling in this handler in dashboard and resulting in the change of active view state. So dashboard will know that what particular menu item has been selected in menu content. So it's more like passing in the handler from dashboard component to the side menu component, and from side menu component to the menu component, and finally receiving back the selected item in side menu and then back in dashboard. Another example of REST API use is binding it with a data grid. MUI comes with an extensive and full feature data grid that we can use in our project. We will be using DataGrid to display data that we retrieve using customer's endpoint. Here I am importing box, button, and some icons that I like to use within my grid. Then I have imported DataGrid related classes, and then I am importing my customer service and customer DTO. Here we have two different components. One component will help us to create a toolbar that we can use within DataGrid for editing, and the DataGrid itself, customer grid here. So first we will be discussing the edit toolbar, and in this case the first thing that we need to do is to extend the functionality of toolbar property overrides, and we will be adding two more properties like set rows and set row model modes model. The set rows updates the data grid data. It takes a function that receives the current rows and return the new rows. This allows us to modify the existing rows and add new ones. And if we go to set row modes model here, this controls the edit mode for individual rows. It also takes a function that receives the current row modes model and returns a new one. This lets us change a row to edit mode, view mode, or even ignore changes that we made in edit mode. We will be using this in our component below. So here we have the component edit toolbar that will be used inside data grid below. This code here unpacks rows and row modes model from props, and if we go below here, in this section of the code, we are creating a new empty row. We are also creating a temporary unique ID here that will be replaced with UUID by our REST API that we created in NESTJS. The new row is added here using empty strings, and then we are setting the mode here to add it with a focus in the names column, and we are returning the JSX here that will be actually rendered inside a column of our data grid. Now inside customer grid component, we have three use states: row modes model, rows, and is loading. These states will help us rendering the data inside our grid. Then we have use effect here, and inside it we have the fetch customers function. Set is loading state to true, and then we try to fetch all the customer using the customer service. In this case, we are fetching all the customers, but in future parts of the video, we will be using paging and filtering to fetch the customers, as fetching all the customers may be overwhelming for the browser, and there are certain limits to the browser memory that will be exceeded and it will give us crash. So if you have tens of thousands of customers, it is not a good practice to load them all. The good practice is to load them in chunks that are called pages. But for sake of example, we are loading all the customers here. And after that, as in our NESTJS application, in our database model, we have unique identifier that is customer ID, but for the sake of this particular part, we need to map it to ID as it is requirement of DataGrid from MUI. So we are calling the data.map function to map all the customer IDs to ID, and then keeping all the other fields in the same way. And then we are calling the set rows to set the state here. So these will be the rows that we will bind with our data grid later on. And finally, we are setting is loading to false. And in this section of the component, we have different handlers that will allow us to perform different data operations by calling other endpoints for creating, deleting, updating our records or documents if we are using NoSQL database. Here we have a handler function for edit, delete, and save. Currently, it is just deleting records from in-memory dataset, and we are not calling any web service or REST API service to persist data back into the database or do any change. This particular handler will allow us to cancel any changes we have done with our data grid while editing. Similarly, we have other handlers to perform data grid operations. And finally, we have here grid column definitions. This will allow us to define headings for our columns like customer ID, name, email, and also allow us to define the width and other features or properties like if it is editable or not. In case of customer ID, if it is not editable, and rest of the fields are editable. Section here will allow us to add or display the toolbar in the last column of the grid based on if we are in edit mode or not. And here is how it will render. And finally, if we come to the data grid section itself, here we are passing the column definitions and the rows along with the other properties we need. One interesting thing is that in the age of copilots, you can always get explanation about this code from the copilot wherever my manual explanation is not sufficient. You can also generate code with code assist, but in my experience, I've tried many. Some of them can produce really good code for you, while the others can produce code that will be obsolete or based on earlier versions of the libraries. It depends upon the time of model training. If the model doesn't have updated information about that particular library or tool, then the generated code will not be that much of a use. So, what if I put and ask Gemini Code Assist or maybe some other model like Copilot from Microsoft to give me an explanation about this code? So, Here is how you can get more detailed information about this code after downloading it from my GitHub account. So it's giving me some explanation, and it can always assist you in understanding some existing code, or sometimes you can generate some code. Use of AI copilots require a comprehensive understanding of tools, concepts, and terminologies to craft a prompt that can help you out create what you want. And software engineering is not going anywhere till we get into the age of general artificial intelligence, where artificial intelligence can always find new paths and create new tools and extend its own capability.